The leasing office smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and fear. Tara stepped up to the counter, her folder clutched tight, the polished badge of the Fair Housing Commission barely visible in her bag. "I'm here to submit my application," she said. Her voice was calm, measured. The agent behind the desk didn't look up. "We don't accept applications from your area," he said. His eyes flicked to her ID, then back to the screen, dismissive. Tara felt the first flicker of that old familiar weight, the invisible line drawn before she even tried. Her jaw clenched. "Excuse me. We have standards," he muttered almost to himself. "Certain backgrounds don't fit." Her stomach dropped, but she didn't flinch. Only a few seconds, she reminded herself. Seconds to stay calm. She noticed the tension behind him, the subtle shift of his body, the tightening of his jaw, the way his hand hovered near the phone. Threat lingered in the air, thin and sharp as glass. "You're going to regret that tone," he said under his breath, leaning forward slightly. Tara's mind raced. "Do I pull out my badge now? Or wait?" Her heart hammered. Around her, the hum of fluorescent lights, the tick of the wall clock, even the faint smell of old coffee seemed amplified. Then a door behind the counter opened, footsteps echoing, someone coming. Her pulse jumped. And before she could react, the agent's gaze snapped back to her with a predatory smirk. The moment stretched. She realized this isn't just about the apartment. It's a test. And the first move might decide everything. The leasing office smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and the faint anxiety of strangers. Tara stepped inside, her folder clutched tightly to her chest, the badge of the Fair Housing Commission subtly tucked into her tote. Her shoes clicked on the polished tile. Every sound felt amplified. "Hi, I'm here to submit my application for apartment 4B, she said, keeping her tone calm. The agent barely looked up. His hand hovered over the keyboard. "We don't accept applications from your area," he said, eyes scanning her ID. Tara froze. Not out of fear, she'd faced coded bias before, but because the weight of the unspoken prejudice pressed down, thick and invisible. "Excuse me," she said evenly. "We have standards," he muttered almost too quietly. "Certain backgrounds don't fit here." Her pulse quickened. She felt the invisible line drawn before she even tried. Her jaw clenched. "Could you clarify what you mean by that?" she asked, voice steady but sharp. He shrugged, a casual motion that didn't reach his eyes. The tension in his shoulders spoke louder than words. It's complicated." Tara's stomach tightened. "Here it comes." Her hand brushed the badge in her bag. The law gave her power, but discretion mattered. Seconds stretched thin, each tick of the clock like a hammer against her chest. Behind him, the door to the office opened. Footsteps echoed. Someone was coming. Her heart jumped. "You're going to regret that tone," the agent said under his breath, leaning slightly forward, eyes narrowing. The faintest smirk, predatory, flickered across his face. Tara's mind raced. "Do I pull it out now? Or wait?" Around her, fluorescent lights buzzed. The faint smell of coffee mingled with cleaner. Every sound was sharp. Every movement mattered. "Sir." A young assistant stepped in, glancing at both of them. Her presence was small, almost hesitant, but it shifted the room. The agent straightened, but the smirk didn't leave. "I'll handle it," he said. His tone was meant to intimidate. It barely hid the tremor in his voice. Tara's eyes scanned the small office. Tenants sat quietly in chairs, some avoiding her gaze, others watching in wary curiosity. She saw their fear mirrored her own initial hesitation. But she also saw defiance, a memory of all the times she'd spoken up, documented, fought. "Let me see the application, please," she said firmly. Her hand rested lightly on her tote, her fingers brushing the badge. "Now," the agent said, voice tight. "Fine." He typed quickly, then pushed a folder across the counter, his arm tense. The paper felt heavier than it should. Each line, each signature, each detail was a quiet act of defiance against the unspoken rule he enforced. "You're lucky we even consider it," he muttered, a warning disguised as idle chatter. Tara held his gaze. "I'll do everything by the book. Fair housing law. You know it." A pause. The air thickened. His eyes flicked to the door again, then back to her. The room felt smaller. Tension coiled like a spring ready to snap. Footsteps again, closer. She didn't look back. Something was about to happen. The agent shifted slightly, hand twitching near the phone. Threat was subtle, almost invisible, but present. Tara's pulse thrummed in her ears. This isn't about the apartment. She realized the danger wasn't just institutional. It was personal. A test. And her first move might decide everything. The office phone rang sharp and sudden. The agent jerked, eyes snapping toward it. The moment stretched. Tara held her breath, knowing any second could tilt the balance. Her fingers tightened on the folder. Cliffhanger. She had a choice. Pull the badge, call it out, or stay calm. Each option carried risk. And in that room, full of fluorescent light and silent witnesses, every heartbeat counted. The camera of the story lingers on her face, resolute, measured, aware, and the agent's smirk falters just slightly. But before either acts, the assistant's voice pierces the tension. "Sir, they're asking for apartment 4B. Now." Tara stepped out of the leasing office into the late afternoon sun. The city smelled of asphalt warmed by the sun and distant exhaust. Her chest still throbbed from the confrontation, but she forced herself to walk steadily, keeping her folder tucked under her arm. The streets were familiar, yet today they felt charged, like every passerby could be a witness or a threat. Children played on the sidewalk, oblivious to the tension, their laughter sharp against the hum of her thoughts. She paused at a corner cafe and leaned against the wall, scanning the apartment complex she had just left behind. Patterns everywhere, she thought. She pulled out her phone, typing a quick note, agent evasive. Coded language. Possible systemic bias. Watch interactions closely. A neighbor walked past, a middle-aged woman carrying groceries. She froze when she saw Tara's folder. "Oh, hi," she said cautiously, glancing at the leasing office behind her. "Hi," Tara replied, soft but probing. "Have you lived here long?" "Yeah, about 5 years." Her eyes darted. "Things are different. They don't always treat everyone the same." Tara nodded, taking in every nuance, the hesitation, the way she avoided saying the words aloud. "Could you tell me more?" "Just specifics. Even small incidents." The woman's lips pressed into a thin line. "Well, sometimes they say one thing to your face, another behind your back. Some applicants, they just never get called back, even if they have the same credentials." Tara's mind raced. This isn't random. It's systemic. She scribbled notes on a pad, names, dates, excuses used, any soft reasons for rejection. A man emerged from the building, wearing a suit and carrying a laptop bag. He paused, frowned at the street, then kept walking. Tara noticed his expression, mild surprise, quick judgment. Even professionals aren't immune to the subtle signals of bias, she thought. She moved to a bench nearby and observed quietly, taking mental notes. Who interacts with the office staff? Who is ignored or subtly dismissed? Who feels unwelcome without knowing why? Every nod, every sideways glance, every pause in conversation was a piece of the puzzle. Her phone buzzed. A text from the office. "Any updates? Be careful." She swallowed. Even her colleagues understood the subtle danger. Institutional racism wasn't just an abstract law. It was enforced quietly, daily, in micro-moments like these. Tara's eyes fell on the office window. The agent was still inside, rifling through paperwork. His posture was casual, but she caught the way his shoulders stiffened when she looked. A tiny, almost imperceptible signal of awareness. He knew she was watching. Her pulse quickened. He's aware. He knows I'm aware. She jotted more notes, recording her observations. Rejections clustered in certain neighborhoods. Staff avoid eye contact with some applicants. Language is coded. Fit, background, standards, never spelled out. Then a small micro-twist. A young tenant emerged, holding a small dog. He paused, looked directly at Tara, and whispered, "You're the one asking questions, right? About fairness?" Tara nodded subtly. "Yes. Just trying to see what's happening." He hesitated, then said, "Be careful. People, they don't like when someone digs too deep." The warning was simple, but the weight behind it was heavy. Fear was contagious here, subtle but real. Tara felt it, absorbed it, let it sharpen her focus. By now, the sun was dipping lower, casting long shadows across the courtyard. She walked slowly, observing. Each apartment balcony, each window, each door told a story of who was allowed in and who was quietly kept out. She stopped in front of a bulletin board plastered with community notices. A flyer for a new rental program caught her eye, language vague, eligibility opaque. She snapped a photo. Evidence. Details matter. Her notebook was filling fast. Each line, Each observation, each whispered warning would become part of the case she would build. Then another small twist. She noticed a police car parked just around the corner. Officers inside, seemingly watching the street. Tara's stomach tightened. Was this coincidence, or part of the subtle intimidation she had felt before? She stayed, silently observing the interaction between the officer in the car and a delivery man entering the complex. The man smiled nervously, nodded quickly, then hurried inside. The officer's gaze followed him, calm but assessing. A silent signal, authority watching, waiting, testing. Tara's hand tightened on her folder. This isn't just about housing. It's about control. A final micro-twist before she left. A maintenance worker emerged, wiping his hands on a rag. He glanced at her, then back at the office. He muttered under his breath, barely audible. They think no one notices, but we do. Her pulse thrummed. Allies or witnesses were there, even if hidden. She smiled faintly. The story wasn't over, not by a long shot. And yet, as she walked toward her car, she felt the weight of what lay ahead. The evidence, the patterns, the silences, she would need to confront them all. And in the shadows of the parking lot, she sensed a figure watching. Someone who knew she was investigating. Her next move could set off a chain reaction she wasn't fully prepared for. Tara returned to her car, folder clutched tight, sunlight glinting off the dashboard. She exhaled slowly, trying to shake off the lingering tension from her observations. But her mind wouldn't rest. Each glance, each coded remark, each hesitant neighbor replayed like a loop in her head. Time to collect proof, she told herself. Her first stop was a nearby cafe. She knew a few tenants who were willing to talk quietly. Sliding into a corner booth, she pulled out her notebook. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, eyes scanning the room. The tenant, a young woman named Lila, nodded nervously. I don't want trouble, but it's happened before." Tara leaned in, voice low but firm. "I need details. Dates, names, exact words. Every little thing matters." Lila swallowed. "Okay, last month I applied for a unit. Same qualifications as someone else who got in. They said I wasn't a good fit. Just that. And this isn't the first time?" Tara asked. "Not even close. I've seen it with others. Certain applicants just disappear from their system." Tara jotted it all down, every pause, every tremor in her voice. Pattern forming. Evidence accumulating. Next, she visited the leasing office, but not as herself. She posed as an applicant's friend, keeping her badge hidden. Cameras followed her movements, and her phone recorded subtle interactions. The agent glanced up, briefly suspicious, but didn't speak. His body language, rigid, controlled, gave her more data than words ever could. She snapped photos of posted notices, recorded schedules, and saved emails that hinted at selective admissions. Each digital artifact was a piece of the puzzle. Then, a micro-twist, she overheard the agent on the phone. "Make sure she doesn't see anything. Yes, even the files," he said, voice low, sharp. "He knows. He's aware of scrutiny." Tara froze. Her pulse hammered. They're watching. They're trying to control the narrative. Outside, she approached a maintenance worker who had slipped her a knowing nod the day before. "You see what's happening in there?" she asked quietly. He glanced around. "I see everything. People think no one notices, but we do. If you're careful, you can piece it together." She nodded, heart racing. Allies existed, but cautiously. Every conversation, every interaction carried risk. Her next stop was the community bulletin board, photographing rental notices. Words like eligible applicants only and community standards apply jumped out, vague yet exclusionary. She noted dates, signatures, and times. Back in her car, Tara reviewed her collected files. Spreadsheets, photos, recorded snippets, testimonies, they painted a picture. But institutional racism was slippery. Subtle. Legal loopholes made it easier for them to deny wrongdoing. She opened her notebook, summarizing. Staff avoid certain applicants without explanation. Written notices use coded language. Office monitors interactions closely. Tenants fear retaliation. Every line strengthened her case. But a new tension gnawed at her. The subtle presence of the police car from yesterday. Were they monitoring her again? A micro-twist. Her phone buzzed with a text. "Someone's been watching your visits. Be careful." Tara felt the weight of that warning, knowing her every move could be observed. Fear, precise and sharp, prickled her skin. but she refused to let it paralyze her. Instead, it fueled her focus. She made a mental list for the next day. Interview additional tenants discreetly. Cross-check office records. Capture interaction patterns without confrontation. As evening fell, she returned to her apartment. The quiet of her small kitchen felt like a refuge. She sipped tea, scanning her notes. Each piece of evidence layered upon the last, a growing dossier of injustice. Then an unexpected twist, a knock at her door. Her heart jumped. Who could it be this late? Through the peephole, she saw a neighbor, a man in his 40s, casual clothes, holding a small folder. No smile, no greeting, just eyes that said, "I know what you're doing. Be careful." Tara opened the door cautiously. I have records," he whispered. "They'll help. But you need to move fast. They're watching everyone connected to this." The folder felt heavier than paper. Evidence, allies, warnings, all wrapped into one. She realized the stakes were escalating. This was no longer just about proving discrimination. It was about staying one step ahead of those trying to suppress it. Tara glanced toward the street, the distant hum of a police car sending a shiver down her spine. Her next move could either expose the truth, or put her directly in their crosshairs. Tara unlocked her apartment door, but the familiar click sounded foreign tonight. The quiet hum of the refrigerator, the soft tick of the wall clock. Every ordinary sound felt amplified, like the city itself was holding its breath. She set her folder down on the kitchen counter, then froze. Her phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "We see what you're doing. Stop asking questions." Her stomach knotted. She'd expected resistance from the leasing office, but threats, personal, intrusive, weren't part of the plan. "Breathe. Focus," she reminded herself, sliding the phone into her pocket. A soft knock came at her door. She peeked through the peephole. No one. Just the dark hallway, empty and quiet. Her pulse quickened. "Paranoia," she whispered to herself. But deep down she knew better. The next morning, Tara noticed the police car parked a block away, the same officers from the previous week. Their presence wasn't overt, just enough to make her notice, to make her feel watched. Every trip to the corner store, every walk down the street, became a calculated act. At work, subtle pressures built. A co-worker, normally casual, avoided eye contact. Another colleague whispered, "Be careful, don't make waves." Their concern was real, but it underscored the tension she was facing. Every ally was shadowed by fear. Her apartment phone rang mid-afternoon. "Tara." The voice was clipped, professional. Her heart skipped. "Yes," she replied cautiously. "This is Officer Briggs. You're being watched for your own safety," he said. Tone flat, almost polite. But Tara could hear the underlying authority, the subtle reminder that her actions were now under scrutiny. She gritted her teeth. "I'm aware. Thank you for the warning." The line clicked dead. Polite intimidation, she realized. Institutional power extending into her home life. The very presence of authority was meant to unsettle her. She closed her eyes, breathing slowly. The folder on her counter was a lifeline, a map through the pressure. She spread out her evidence, photos, emails, testimonies, and notes from tenants. Each piece of proof was a bulwark against the creeping tension, a reminder of the mission she couldn't abandon. Then came another micro-twist. A neighbor, a woman in her 50s, approached her apartment window. Tara noticed the look, fear but also quiet encouragement. A subtle nod, a whispered, "You're not alone." Allies existed, but invisibly, quietly, carefully. Even her dog sensed the tension, pawing at her as she moved through the room. Its soft whine cut through the anxiety, a reminder that life carried on, and she was not isolated entirely. Later, she received a call from Lila, the tenant she interviewed yesterday. "They're asking questions," Lila whispered. "About you. About the people you're talking to. Be careful." Tara clenched her fists. "Thank you. I'll keep my distance, but I can't stop now." Escalation. Every interaction was a risk, yet each risk brought new insight, new pieces of evidence. She moved strategically, knowing that any misstep could trigger retaliation or suppression. Her evening was spent cross-referencing documents, mapping dates and interactions. Each tenant's account intersected with office behavior, building a web that revealed the pattern of bias. And always in the background, the faint presence of law enforcement loomed, silent, watchful, a reminder that authority extended far beyond the leasing office. A knock at the door startled her again. She peeked, no one. But a small envelope rested at the doorstep. She picked it up, hands shaking slightly. Inside, anonymous notes, additional testimonies, hints of prior discrimination she hadn't yet discovered. New threat, new consequence. Someone was helping, but cautiously, anonymously. The risk extended not just to her, but to those around her. She sank into her chair, letting her head rest on her hands. The emotional weight was heavy. Fear, frustration, determination all tangled together. Every decision now carried stakes beyond paperwork. Every step was a calculated move in a psychological chess game. Then a final micro-twist. A shadow passed her window. She looked up sharply. The police car, previously parked blocks away, was now at the end of her street. She could see the outline of the officer inside, watching, waiting. Her pulse thundered. She knew her next move had to be precise. She could no longer act solely as an investigator. She had to act as a strategist, a protector of herself and the truth she carried. The sun dipped behind the buildings, casting long shadows across her apartment. Tara realized this wasn't just about the leasing office anymore. Her home, her life, her neighbors, they were all part of the battlefield now. And the next step, the next confrontation, would decide whether the truth would be exposed or buried under the weight of intimidation. Tara parked a block from the leasing office, the folder resting on her passenger seat like a shield. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the street. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, eyes sharp, posture steady. This wasn't just another visit. This was the reckoning. She walked into the office with measured steps. The agent looked up immediately, a smirk playing at the corner of his lips. His casual posture didn't hide the tension in his shoulders. He knew she was coming prepared. "I need to discuss my application," Tara said, voice calm but firm. Her hand rested lightly on the folder, subtly showing she was armed with evidence. "Oh, you again," he said, leaning back in his chair. His tone was meant to dismiss, but Tara noticed the flicker of unease in his eyes. "I've reviewed your procedures," she said, sliding a set of printed documents across the counter. "There are inconsistencies in how applications are processed. Certain applicants are denied without justification." He frowned, eyes narrowing. "And who gave you the right to question us?" "The Fair Housing Act does," she replied evenly, fingers brushing the badge tucked under her jacket. "I'm here to ensure compliance. For everyone." The agent's smirk faltered. "Compliance? You mean snooping around?" Tara leaned forward. "Observing patterns, yes. Documenting behavior. Protecting applicants from unfair treatment. That's my job." A micro-twist. The office assistant appeared behind him, glancing nervously at the folder. Their silence said more than words. The staff knew the power she wielded. "You're being aggressive," the agent muttered. "Don't forget your place." Tara's pulse didn't quicken. She held his gaze. "I haven't forgotten. And neither should you." Dialogue moved fast now, clipped, charged with authority, intimidation, and unspoken threats. "Those applicants? You think their experiences are isolated?" Tara pressed. "Watch your tone," he said, jaw tight. "These aren't isolated. They're systemic. Documented. Witnessed. Ignored." He slammed a hand on the desk, a show of power meant to intimidate. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." "I do," she replied, calm, unflinching. "And I will see this through." A tension shift. The room felt smaller. Every fluorescent light buzzed in sync with her heartbeat. The small group of tenants waiting outside, visible through the glass, watched, curious and anxious. Their fear mirrored the stakes. "Enough," the agent snapped. "You're making enemies here." "I'm holding people accountable," Tara said, sliding another sheet across the counter. Emails, notes, patterns of rejection. Each page was a strike against the unspoken rules he enforced. A pause. His eyes flicked from the folder to her face. He realized the extent of exposure she carried. Then a micro-twist, the assistant whispered, "You should look at this too." She handed Tara a stack of internal memos showing selective approval, subtle bias, and coded language. Proof that could stand in court. The agent's smirk disappeared completely. "Where did you get these?" "Public records. Interviews. Observations. Evidence doesn't lie," Tara said. Her voice rang steady, unwavering. Silence fell. The only sound, the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant city noise through the window. The agent leaned back, shoulders tight, trying to mask the panic. You think you can just walk in here and change things? I know I can ensure fairness, she replied. It's not about me. It's about the law. And the people you're supposed to serve. Another micro twist. A tenant peeked from the hallway, whispering, She's right, we've been ignored too long. The room shifted. Fear, authority, and defiance collided. The agent's face betrayed the tension, his attempt at control cracking under scrutiny. You're making threats, he spat. I'm making observations, she said sharply. Threats come from you when you deny people their rights. I'm here to stop that pattern. Every line of dialogue exposed power imbalances, silent intimidation, and coded prejudice. Tara's calm resolve contrasted with his escalating desperation. Then a quiet but powerful micro-twist. The badge slipped from her jacket as she leaned slightly forward. Not fully visible, just enough to hint authority. The agent noticed, his hands twitching near the phone. A new tension emerged. If he called for reinforcements, this could escalate further. But Tara's nerves remained steady. Her preparation, the evidence, and the law were her shields. I'm going to file a report, she said, voice unwavering. Internal review. Legal oversight. Your office's practices will be examined. The agent flinched. Small, almost imperceptible. You can't. Yes, I can, she interrupted. And I will. Fair housing applies to everyone without exception. Including you. Outside the window, a figure she hadn't seen before observed the office. Someone connected to the higher authority, someone who could escalate or expose everything she'd discovered. Tara's gaze met theirs briefly, realizing the next confrontation might extend beyond this office, into the city itself. Tara sat in the dimly lit office of her law team, the blinds casting thin stripes of shadow across the floor. The folder she carried was now thicker. Emails, recordings, testimonies, and tenant accounts stacked neatly, each page a weight of proof. Her colleague, Marcus, tapped his pen nervously on the table. They've hired lawyers. Management isn't taking this lightly. Tara's jaw tightened. They've never faced scrutiny like this. And they're about to learn what compliance really means. The tension in the room was palpable. Every tick of the clock seemed louder, echoing the stakes. Outside, the city continued its hum, oblivious to the confrontation brewing behind these doors. A knock came. It was her supervisor, a calm woman with piercing eyes. Tara, we need to strategize carefully. They'll push back, legal loopholes, intimidation, subtle silencing. Don't let them distract you. Tara nodded. I won't. But every detail matters. Every email, every subtle refusal, they all add up. Dialogue moved fast now, clipped, precise. They've denied applicants citing vague reasons, Marcus said. You've documented patterns. But management may claim coincidence. Patterns don't lie, Tara replied, her voice firm. And evidence will back it up. We just need to connect the dots clearly. A new micro-twist. An anonymous email popped into her inbox. Subject line. Internal documents attached. Handle carefully. Tara clicked it cautiously. Inside were memos from the leasing office, drafts showing selective approval, instructions to obscure certain applicants' files, and notes suggesting subtle collusion with security staff. Her eyes widened. This is worse than I thought. Marcus leaned over her shoulder. These documents, this is irrefutable. But they'll deny everything. They'll try to manipulate the narrative. I know, Tara said. Her hands hovered over the keyboard. We counter with transparency. Every hidden act, every coded phrase, they can't spin it. Suddenly, a phone call interrupted. Tara answered. It was Lila. They know you're digging, Lila whispered. Someone followed me today. Just be careful. Tara's stomach tightened. Fear was no longer abstract. It was a physical weight pressing against her chest. Thank you. Stay safe. Document everything. Don't let them intimidate you. She hung up and exhaled slowly. Her mind raced through every angle, every possible retaliation. Institutional racism wasn't just a concept. It was a carefully orchestrated system designed to protect those in power. And she had to dismantle it piece by piece. A micro-twist. The door opened again, this time a junior staff member from the leasing office slipped inside, visibly shaken. I heard you're gathering evidence, they whispered. There's more things that weren't in the memos. Patterns, instructions. I can show you, but it has to be discreet. Tara nodded. Allies existed, but they had to remain invisible. "We'll do it carefully. Your safety matters." The staff member handed over a small flash drive. Tara plugged it into her laptop. Files appeared. Emails between management and security, subtle notes on which applicants to prioritize and which to block. Each line, each instruction was a nail in the case, a clear picture of intentional discrimination. New tension. The clock ticked, each minute amplifying the danger. Management could discover her activity at any moment. Police monitoring, office surveillance, and the threat of retaliation were all real. Her phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message. "They're watching your apartment. Tonight. Be cautious." Tara's pulse raced. Her home wasn't safe anymore. Every movement, every plan, had to account for observation and potential interference. Marcus leaned back. "Tara, they're cornering themselves. But you're visible now. Every step you take will be scrutinized. Even small mistakes could be twisted against you." "I understand," she said, her voice steady but eyes sharp. "That's why precision matters. Evidence first, strategy next, intimidation last." Another micro-twist. A knock at the door startled her. A city inspector, sent by the Fair Housing Commission, stepped in. "We're here to review compliance procedures." "It's urgent." Tara swallowed. Authority aligned with the law had arrived. But she knew the inspection alone wouldn't stop subtle retaliation. It would only escalate the stakes. "Let's go through everything," she said, gathering her notes, her folder, and the flash drive. "Every document, every memo, every witness account. Nothing is off limits." Dialogue crackled with tension. "Are you sure this will hold up?" Marcus asked. "It has to," Tara replied. "This is about more than apartments. This is about accountability. If we fail, the patterns continue. If we succeed, it changes how this office operates." As the inspector and her team began reviewing files, Tara noticed the subtle glances from her colleagues. The silent acknowledgement of the danger, the weight of scrutiny, the fear of consequences for everyone involved. Tara looked out the window and saw a police car parked further down the street, officers inside. Their gaze was fixed on the building. She realized that the confrontation wasn't just legal. It was now psychological, institutional, and public. And the next move she made could trigger the exposure of corruption or provoke a counterattack that might compromise everything. The morning air felt sharper than usual as Tara approached the leasing office. She carried the full folder now, emails, memos, witness statements, and the flash drive, all organized, irrefutable. Every step resonated with purpose. Inside, the office was deceptively quiet. The agent looked up from his desk, jaw tight. "Back again," he muttered, voice a mix of irritation and suppressed panic. "I'm here to present findings," Tara said firmly, laying the folder on the counter. "Evidence of discriminatory practices, intentional denials, and procedural violations." He waved a hand dismissively. "You're bluffing. You have nothing." Tara smiled faintly, not breaking eye contact. "You'll see." A micro-twist. The assistant appeared beside her, subtly sliding over a stack of additional documents, emails from management, internal memos, and selective approval lists. The agent stiffened. He knew the scope of exposure had grown. Dialogue moved fast, sharp. "You think this changes anything?" he spat. "Yes. Patterns exposed, actions documented." "These aren't opinions, they're facts," Tara replied. The agent leaned back, attempting intimidation, but his composure faltered. You can't prove intent." "You can't hide it either," she shot back, her voice steady, each word a strike. "Every instruction, every rejection, every coded message is here." A new tension. The building manager stepped in, eyes darting nervously between Tara and the agent. "What's happening?" "I'm presenting evidence of systemic discrimination," Tara said calmly. "This office is under formal review." He paled. "You don't understand the ramifications." "Ramifications?" Tara asked, voice rising slightly with controlled anger. "For the applicants, for the tenants, for the law?" "I understand perfectly." From the hallway, tenants peeked in. Their eyes were wide, some whispering. Fear, relief, and hope mingled in the small crowd. Each witness strengthened Tara's position, silent validation of the abuses she was exposing. A micro-twist. A journalist, alerted anonymously by a tenant, entered the office. She held a recorder, notebook ready. "I've been following this story," the journalist said. "If you're willing to speak, the public needs to know." The agent's face turned pale. The power imbalance shifted. Now, every action, every word could have consequences beyond the office walls. "Do you have proof of their systemic bias?" the journalist asked Tara. "I do," Tara replied. "Internal memos, emails, patterns of selective approval, and witness statements from tenants who have been ignored or discriminated against." The room was tense. Every second stretched, loaded with stakes. The agent's hands twitched. He could call for security, call for reinforcements, but every move now was scrutinized. Every step could expose more. A subtle threat hung in the air. The officer who had monitored Tara's apartment parked outside, watching silently. Authority loomed both inside and outside the building. Another micro-twist. The assistant handed Tara a final set of documents stamped confidential. They contained instructions for ignoring applicants from specific neighborhoods, a smoking gun. The agent's face turned ashen. Dialogue crackled. "You're not leaving here with these documents," he said sharply, voice rising. "I'm not leaving," Tara said firmly. "The law permits me to document this. Your actions are on record now." Tension escalated further when a tenant stepped forward, voice trembling but clear. "They told me I wasn't welcome because of where I live, because of my race. This is happening to me too." The agent's smirk disappeared. His attempts to control the room were failing. Power was no longer entirely his. The room shifted, silent, tense, charged with confrontation and moral reckoning. Another micro-twist. The journalist whispered into her recorder, "We have multiple tenants willing to go public. And city inspectors are on their way." The agent swallowed hard. This will ruin people," he said, voice low. "Not people," Tara corrected. "Actions. Patterns. Procedures. This is about accountability." The emotional stakes heightened. Tenants murmured their support. Witnesses nodded. Fear was replaced with a fragile courage. The office walls, once a symbol of quiet oppression, now felt exposed, vulnerable. A final twist. The city inspector arrived, entering briskly. "We're reviewing compliance today. Everything will be examined thoroughly." The agent froze, realizing the extent of the exposure. Every attempt to hide discrimination, every coded instruction, every intimidation tactic was now on the record. Tara looked out the window and saw more than just the police car she had noticed earlier. Another vehicle approached, another layer of authority, someone higher in the chain. She realized the confrontation was far from over. What had started as a local investigation was now spiraling into a full-scale institutional review. And tomorrow, the battle would move to court. Her pulse raced, not with fear but determination. The truth was exposed, but the final test, legal, public, emotional, was only beginning. Tara stepped into the conference room, the folder now a symbol of months of work, risk, and persistence. Lawyers, city inspectors, and senior management filled the space. The fluorescent lights above glared down, harsh and exposing every detail. "Miss Taylor," the senior manager began, voice tight, "we've reviewed the findings. Can you walk us through your evidence?" Tara nodded, laying out the memos, emails, and tenant statements in chronological order. Her movements were precise, deliberate. Each document, each rejection, each instruction is part of a consistent pattern. Selective approval, coded language, and intimidation were used to exclude applicants based on race and neighborhood. The room grew tense. Lawyers whispered, flipping through pages. The manager's face tightened. Behind him, officers who had monitored her previous actions shifted uneasily. Authority felt exposed. Dialogue crackled with sharp clarity. "This is circumstantial," one lawyer said, frowning. "Not circumstantial," Tara replied firmly. Direct instructions and internal memos clearly outline the discriminatory practice. Witness testimony corroborates these patterns. Every step was documented. A micro-twist. A tenant, Lila, appeared virtually via video call, tearful but resolute. "They said I wasn't welcome because of where I live. I felt invisible, until Ms. Taylor helped me find my voice." Gasps filled the room. The manager's confident posture wavered. The subtle smirk that had dominated previous encounters disappeared entirely. Another micro-twist. The assistant who had quietly supported Tara stepped forward, providing her signature on internal documents confirming what the memos indicated. The weight of corroboration grew heavier. "You're exposing internal practices that could be legally actionable," another lawyer said, voice tense. "Yes," Tara said, voice steady but emotionally charged. And accountability is necessary. Policies must reflect fairness, not prejudice. The room fell silent. Emotional stakes were high. Fear, shame, and authority collided. Every observer, lawyer, inspector, tenant, felt the pressure of what justice now demanded. A small but crucial tension. The senior manager glanced nervously at the officers outside the room. Authority watching from multiple angles, but now it was being held accountable rather than wielded as intimidation. Tara's pulse thrummed, her fingers brushing over the folder. She felt the gravity of every decision, every document, every testimony. The battle wasn't just legal, it was personal, emotional, and moral. Effective immediately, the lead inspector announced, breaking the silence. All discriminatory practices will be halted. Policies must be revised. Compliance officers will monitor all future applications. Violations will face legal consequences. The manager slumped slightly, a mixture of defeat and reluctant acceptance. Justice, small but tangible, had begun to take hold. A micro-twist. A city official pulled Tara aside quietly. "We're recommending a formal review of the officers who were involved in oversight," they said. "Your vigilance has triggered systemic accountability." Dialogue moved fast, tense. "So this ends here?" one lawyer asked, incredulous. "For now," Tara replied. "But accountability is ongoing. This office, and others like it, must be watched to ensure fairness isn't optional." The room exhaled collectively. Emotional release swept through the space, relief, validation, but also the lingering weight of what had been endured. Tara stepped toward the window, looking out over the complex. Tenants waved subtly. Some whispered their thanks. Fear had been replaced slowly by hope. She felt the emotional cost, weeks of tension, personal threats, sleepless nights, but also the quiet satisfaction of resilience. Every documented pattern, every risk taken, had led to a tangible outcome. Fairness enforced, bias exposed, authority held accountable. A final micro-twist. Outside, the agent who had attempted to intimidate her earlier appeared, face pale, eyes darting. He said nothing, just a nod of acknowledgement. Recognition of defeat, perhaps, but also the silent weight of consequences now settling in. Tara's gaze returned to the folder. It wasn't just paper. It was proof, validation, and a testament to the quiet courage it took to fight for justice. Even as policies changed and accountability began, she knew the battle wasn't over everywhere. Racism, subtle and systemic, would appear again. But tonight, justice had a face and resilience had been rewarded. The city lights flickered on, bathing the complex in gold. Tara exhaled, letting the weight of the moment settle. The victory was bittersweet, emotional, and hard-won. But it was real. The apartment was quiet. Tara sank into her chair, the folder now neatly stacked on the table beside her. The papers felt lighter than before, though her mind was heavy with everything that had happened. Evidence, confrontations, threats, exposure, it all lingered. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lila. "We got the apartment. Thank you. I feel safe." Tara smiled faintly. Relief. Validation. But the victory was tempered by exhaustion, by the weight of what she had endured. She walked to the window, looking down at the complex she had spent months observing. Tenants were moving in and out, laughter and chatter filling the air. For the first time, she noticed a subtle shift, confidence small but visible. The patterns of bias had been disrupted, replaced with oversight, transparency, accountability. Her colleague Marcus called. "Tara, how are you holding up?" "Exhausted," she admitted. "But things are changing. People can breathe a little easier here." "Good work," he said quietly. "This isn't the end, but it's a start." A micro-twist. A neighbor tapped on her door. She had kept her distance throughout the investigation, but now she offered a small smile. "They've started notifying tenants about policy changes," the neighbor said. "People are talking. People are hopeful." Tara nodded, feeling the quiet satisfaction of impact. The systemic barriers hadn't vanished overnight, but exposure had shifted the momentum. Dialogue continued, intimate and revealing. "You were brave," the neighbor said softly. "I've seen how people in this building avoided confrontation, stayed silent. You gave them a voice." Tara's fingers brushed the folder. "I didn't just do it for me. I did it for every tenant who was ignored, silenced, or dismissed." Even as the relief settled, subtle tension remained. She knew the office would eventually attempt to adapt, to navigate around oversight. Racism in its coded forms was persistent. Vigilance would be necessary. Her dog jumped onto her lap, pawing at her hands. Its quiet presence was grounding, a reminder that life continued outside the legal battles, outside the investigations, outside the tension that had consumed her days and nights. A small micro-twist, a knock at the door. A journalist she had worked with handed her a copy of the published story. Bold headline: Systemic Housing Discrimination Exposed. Fair Housing Investigator Holds Office Accountable. Tara flipped through the pages, eyes scanning tenants' stories, memos, and photographs, all verified, all public. Validation, yes, but also responsibility. Her actions had ripple effects far beyond her apartment. She sat back, letting the weight sink in. The emotional cost was real. Weeks of sleep lost, personal threats, subtle intimidation, constant surveillance. But resilience had carried her through. Dialogue reflective now. I don't know if people realize, Tara whispered to herself. The fear. The quiet pressure. The way silence can harm more than words. Marcus called again. You're making a difference, he said. But take care of yourself. The aftermath can be just as heavy as the fight itself. Tara nodded, staring out at the evening skyline. Shadows stretched across the city, blending with the fading sunlight. Every battle left its mark, even in victory. A micro-twist, her phone buzzed again. A notification. Tenants had started organizing meetings, workshops, community discussions, something she had never anticipated. The fight had sparked broader awareness, community action. Tara exhaled slowly. Victory was tangible, yes, but it was not without consequence. Emotional scars remained, but so did hope, resilience, and the knowledge that one voice carefully wielded could disrupt patterns of injustice. As night fell, Tara gazed out over the city, aware that systemic bias existed far beyond this single office. But she also realized that exposure, persistence, and courage could ignite change wherever injustice lurked. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight justice had a face and resilience had won a small, significant battle. The courthouse steps gleamed under the morning sun. Tara stood at the bottom, folder in hand, heart steady but mind alert. Months of investigation, threats, confrontation, and documentation had led to this moment. Justice, she hoped, was within reach. Inside, the courtroom buzzed quietly with anticipation. Lawyers, tenants, city inspectors, and journalists filled the room. The leasing office staff sat nervously, their earlier confidence replaced by tension, uncertainty, and visible fear. Tara's eyes met those of the agent, the man who had tried to intimidate her, whose microaggressions and coded instructions had caused so much harm. His smirk was gone. He now wore a mask of apprehension, realizing that the full weight of accountability was about to land. The judge entered. Silence fell. Every eye fixed forward, every heartbeat amplifying the stakes. Dialogue began, taut and sharp. "Ms. Taylor," the judge said, voice measured, "you may present your findings." Tara stepped forward. "Your Honor, the evidence shows systemic discrimination in the leasing office," she said, spreading documents across the front table. Emails, internal memos, witness statements, and tenant testimonies reveal a pattern: selective approval, coded language, and intentional exclusion based on race and neighborhood. These actions violate fair housing laws and undermine public trust. The opposing attorney, defensive, attempted to deflect. "Your Honor, this is circumstantial. Patterns do not prove intent. Applicants are rejected for many reasons unrelated to race." Tara's voice didn't waver. Intent is clear. Policies were manipulated. Employees were instructed to favor certain applicants and dismiss others. Witnesses confirm that denials were consistent with these instructions. The patterns themselves constitute proof of systemic bias. A micro-twist. One tenant rose, voice shaking but resolute. "I was told I wasn't welcome because of where I live. I felt powerless, ignored, invisible. Ms. Taylor showed me my voice matters." Murmurs filled the room. The agent's hands clenched the edge of the table. Authority, previously unchecked, now buckled under public exposure. Tara continued, presenting memos and internal emails, each slide and document punctuated with succinct, cinematic narration in her head. Patterns of abuse. Microaggressions documented. Witnesses verified. Institutional responsibility undeniable. Another micro-twist. The assistant who had quietly supported Tara appeared as a witness. I saw instructions given. I was afraid to speak before, they said. Now I am here. It is true. The office intentionally discriminated. The courtroom shifted. The balance of power now leaned toward justice. Every document, every witness, every carefully collected testimony compounded into irrefutable evidence. The agent's lawyer tried one last defense. These are isolated incidents. There's no proof this reflects office policy. Tara's eyes met the agent's. Isolated? 5 years of documented cases, memos, and instructions prove otherwise. Policy does not exist to discriminate, yet it was used to do exactly that. Systemic bias is not theory. It is here in your office, in these documents, in the experiences of every affected tenant. The judge's gavel tapped, signaling silence. Everyone waited. The tension was palpable, electric. A final micro-twist. A city inspector presented additional compliance audits, confirming patterns of selective approval and coded exclusion. The evidence could not be denied. The courtroom held its breath as the judge deliberated. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Then, finally, based on the evidence presented, the court finds the leasing office guilty of violating fair housing laws, the judge declared. Immediate corrective measures are required. Employees involved will face disciplinary action. A full public report will be issued. Tenants affected shall receive restitution as appropriate. A wave of relief swept the room. The tenants whispered to each other, faces softening, shoulders relaxing. Authority had been held accountable. Patterns of injustice exposed. Dialogue now softer, reflective. You did it, Lila said, tears in her eyes as she hugged Tara. You gave us our lives back. Tara shook her head slightly, overwhelmed. We did it. This is everyone's victory, the tenants, the witnesses, the people who finally spoke up. Outside, cameras captured every moment. The agent left quietly, head bowed, his authority diminished. The office, once a symbol of intimidation and coded bias, was now exposed, accountable, and under public scrutiny. A small micro-twist. As Tara stepped out of the courthouse, a new tenant approached her. I heard about the case. You've changed lives today. But the fight isn't over elsewhere. She nodded, letting the weight of responsibility settle. Justice had been served here, but systemic bias existed far beyond these walls. Awareness, courage, and exposure could ignite change, but vigilance would always be necessary. Her phone buzzed, a news notification. Local Fair Housing Investigation exposes discrimination, sparks nationwide awareness. Tara exhaled, letting the relief wash over her. Emotional scars remained, but the victory was undeniable. The legal system had reinforced fairness, tenants had their voices restored, and a clear warning had been sent to anyone who tried to manipulate authority for prejudice. Final reflection. Tara looked at the city skyline, golden sunlight spilling across the buildings. Her heart swelled with bittersweet triumph. This chapter had ended. Justice had been served. But she knew that elsewhere injustice persisted, and her work, her vigilance, and her courage could be the spark for the next battle.